Hello, veterinary friends. Welcome to the Veterinary Life Coach podcast. Today, I have an absolutely fabulous return guest for you. His name is Dr. Rick LeCouteur, and he is a veterinarian, author, and a conservation photographer. His journey has evolved beyond clinics and teaching into the enchanting realm of children's literature, including his newest children's book, Nasty Names Are Hurtful, An Australian White Ibis in the City. And I did buy that book after I talked to him the last time. Through his stories about animals, Rick seeks to cultivate in young readers a sense of curiosity, empathy, and responsibility towards the natural world. And on our last podcast that we did together, number 312, I promised to bring Rick back to tell us some of his veterinary stories. And that's what we're going to do today. Welcome to the podcast, Rick.
Oh, thank you very much, Julie. It's great to be here again.
I'm super happy to have you. Do you want to tell the listeners anything about yourself before we get into this? You want to give a brief bio? I know we did it on the last podcast, but
Yeah, I don't think brief is a word that I can do
that you're
very
good
well.
at.
But very, very briefly, I was born and raised on a farm in Australia, went to veterinary school in Australia, felt somewhat isolated after completing vet school, a long way from the rest of the world. And after a year or two in practice, decided that I would go to see the world and set off. And that was quite a few years ago now. And I still am in North America. And I go home every year to visit. Home is still Australia, although I'm a US citizen and proud to be so. But I spent most of my career in North America, Canada, and the US, Colorado and California. And I've been privileged to be a teacher in veterinary med, veterinary neurology and neurosurgery for most of those years. I retired in 2015, and I don't think retirement is a very kind word, as I think I've said to you before. It
That's right.
sounds
We
as
don't like
though
that word, right?
No, it sounds as though it's all over, and but I have a concept about retirement that it should be called, rather than retirement, starting over. And so, in my retirement, I'm very active in photography. I can't call myself a wildlife photographer because those guys and women are truly talented, but I struggle, and so I call myself a conservation photographer, which means that I'm trying to promote awareness of the animal world and wildlife and conservation and biodiversity. At the same time, I work in a wildlife expedition company and I write books. And until my latest one, I have chosen to write children's picture books, but now I'm branching off into adult narratives.
That's amazing. I love that. I love authors because I know how hard it is.
Well, you're a successful author.
Well, yeah, I am now, but it took me, over 50 years to get there, and it was a mind struggle. It's hard to get over yourself and put words out there that people are going to read and then get over the self-doubt about it.
I don't recommend it for anybody with a faint heart because it is a terribly difficult journey. It's like being the best tennis player in the world. Right behind you are thousands and thousands of men and women who almost made it. And
Sure.
any of the professional sports are like that. And
Yeah.
book writing is harsh. It's not for the faint of heart, as I've already said. And it takes perseverance, persistence, and you've got
Right.
to give it a
And
lot
it's
of
kind of a
time.
lonely endeavor, right? Because you're always alone in your thoughts, and it's really difficult to get out of that self-judgment and just put the words down um and not second guess yourself all the time. I think that's part of it. It's an exercise in just letting go.
It's a hard road, and I agree
Hmm.
with you.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it takes. But I wouldn't want to discourage anyone from doing it because
Right.
it's also on the flip side, it's incredibly rewarding. It helps me, and I think many authors would say it helps to learn more about oneself.
Yes.
I've discovered quite a lot about myself. Resilience, humility are two things that I talk about a lot. And I think through writing these things down, one is able to look, as it were, from the outside in and see yourself in a slightly different light. But if you think you're going to immediately write a book and have book tours and make a fortune, then I would not recommend book writing for you.
That's right. Yeah, it's not highly lucrative, right? Unless you get really lucky and something really takes off.
Unless you're a golfer and win the Masters, they're the people who can make the money, and then
Right.
there are all the journeymen and women below them who work so hard. There are uh, I think it's 250,000 children's books a year published in the US,
I believe it.
and about half of those are children's picture books, and
Right.
so it's a very competitive pursuit.
Yeah,
But
but yours are really cool because after I talked to you the last time on the podcast, I ordered all of them, I think. I have all of them. And I looked at them and read through them, and they're really interesting. So it was kind of the idea that if I ever have grandchildren, now I'll have these children's books to read to them that are high quality and beautiful photos and all of that. So I'm a
well,
fan.
thank you for that, and that high praise indeed. As I've read your book also, and thoroughly enjoyed it
Thanks so much.
and
So
learned.
today we're going to talk about stories.
Okay.
So do you have one to start with? Do you have an idea of where to start?
Well, I do. In my role as a veterinary educator, I was very lucky. I mean, I graduated from over 50 years ago. We just had our 50th vet school reunion in
That's
Australia.
so fun.
And it was so interesting. I wasn't expecting to walk into a room that it was full of old people, and that surprised me. But then I realized they were all my classmates.
I know
And
we don't realize how old we're getting, right?
oh, speak for yourself. I've already been where you are some time ago. And anyway, so I realized that storytelling is such an important aspect of interacting with others. We learn about others and we learn about ourselves. And so I guess as we talked about before the podcast began, I guess my latest writing project is a narrative. It started out as a memoir about my 2 weeks that I spent with James Herriott, whose real name is Alfred Wight or Alf Wight, and Siegfried, whose real name is Donald Sinclair, in Yorkshire in 1976, before either of them had reached any level of fame. Of course, now their books are read in 40 countries and millions of people know about them and love them. And I think you're included in that number.
Yes, yeah, I'm a huge fan.
Yeah, I in 1976, after a year or two in practice, I decided to see the world, as I've already mentioned, and traveled first to England, as young Australians tend to do. We're comfortable with that as a starting point, and ended up in Yorkshire, where I spent 2 weeks with the local vet. I had read none of the Herriot books. I knew nothing about him. And of course, most of the world didn't know about him in 1976.
Fan, yeah.
He'd written a couple of his books, but they weren't well known. He hadn't been recognized in the US really yet. And so I just spent 2 weeks with these wonderful Yorkshire veterinarians traveling the Yorkshire countryside. By the way, Siegfried in real life drove a Land Rover at that stage, not the very smart sports car that he drives in the latest rendition of the television series.
Right.
And so it occurred to me, talking to a friend, that people might like to know what Herriot was all about before he became Herriot, when he was just
Sure.
the local vet.
Yeah.
And she thought there might be a lot of interest in that narrative. So as I said, it started out as about me with them, and ultimately I have withdrawn from the book and just am a first person observer. And I find the stories come flooding back. And one in particular that I'd love to tell is about going out with Siegfried the first day I was in Yorkshire. And we had to castrate a few young colts. It was quite an experience to go behind the scenes on a Yorkshire farm. And on the way there, Siegfried had said, "Well, what sort of anesthetic would you use, young man?" And being fresh out of vet school, 2 years out of vet school, I had all sorts of ideas. I mentioned intravenous anesthetics, I mentioned inhalant anesthetics, I mentioned sedatives, I mentioned post-operative care. And by the time we'd arrived at the farm, I had exhausted my knowledge about equine anesthesia. And Siegfried just said, "Well, see what you think of what I use." So we went out into a field. He always did his castrations on a nice fresh field. This one happened to be lined with buttercups. So it was a yellow carpet. And these beautiful young colts were brought out one by the local farmer, who was in a tweed jacket and one of those flat caps that Yorkshire farmers wear. And of course, Siegfried was wearing a tweed jacket and a tie to
Wow.
castrate horses in the field.
Isn't that great?
And I was thinking, which of my wonderful suggestions will he take? Only to find that he took out of his bag a canvas mask, what used to be called a Cox mask, COX mask. And he fit it snugly over the horse's snout, nose, and mouth, unzipped the zipper, took a sponge, poured chloroform onto the sponge, not measuring it, but just sort of
Eyeballing it.
judging eyeballing the size of the horse, put the sponge in the mask, zipped it up, and I was speechless. And that horse nodded its head, dropped its head, sank to its knees, gently went on its side. He completed the castration. When he'd done one side and was about to start the second side, he said to me, "Young man, would you unzip the mask, please?" It was amazing. I unzipped the mask and that let more oxygen in. He did the other side. He said, "Now please take the mask off." And that horse stood up within 2 minutes perfectly. And
Wow.
he said, "So how does that compare with what you suggested?" And that was a question I never answered. The answer was obvious. And so I learned from that that veterinarians may not use the latest techniques. However, using a technique that is tried and trusted and that you're familiar with may in fact be comparable or even sometimes a better option. And so you can have the latest of everything, but if you don't understand it and don't know how to use it, then it's futile. So I watched this, and the 2 weeks was filled with experiences like this. He would always ask me how I would do it, and then he would do it somewhat differently. Casting cows. I mean, if we went to a cow with a laceration, and he asked me the same question, but this time I was cagey and and didn't give him so many details because
Right.
we had to suture this cow's leg, and it had lacerated its leg on a piece of metal, and so he didn't use any anesthetic whatsoever. He used the old uh, method of rope uh, casting, where the ropes go around the animals just behind the front legs, just in front of the back legs, and he had me pull on the rope, and that pressure just relaxes the cow. She fell on her side. He used local anesthetic, sutured that wound up in no times, and then said, "Take the ropes off," and she stood up again because, of course, cows that are anesthetized are at great risk.
Sure. Yeah.
And so he got around all of that with a simple technique from the 19th century that he used to perfection. And so my time there was quite amazing. And in the book, I write about these stories, and the book is called Before I Knew Herriott, and
I love that.
it won't be out, of course, for probably another year or so. But I thought Herriott devotees, such as you and I,
Yes.
might enjoy knowing that the man never really changed. Fame and some fortune and notoriety did not change him at all. In his shows and in the books written subsequently, he's exactly the same man I saw in 1976. So I was amazed at that.
Yeah, I read a book that his son wrote
Yes, his
about him.
biography.
Yeah, I read that I think just last year because I was reading everything before I went over there because I was going to go on a James Herriott tour. And it was interesting to hear the actual personalities and, that it was the books were true, maybe somewhat exaggerated in personalities, but mostly true.
Yeah, I once, of course, that I found out who I was with, which was the second last day that I was there. I got a chance to read a manuscript. I think it was the original manuscript of It Can Only Happen to a Vet, one of the early books.
First books, yeah.
And it was given to me by Siegfried one evening, and he handed me this dusty old yellow manuscript written on Alf's typewriter and apologized because he had made all his written comments in the margins. And so reading that, I realized the day before I left how lucky I had been to spend this time with them. And there are lots of things that would be that were talked about by Jim Herriott's son Jim in that biography that supported that feeling. And the interesting thing for me was I spent a lot of time with Siegfried, the older partner, and of course he was a married man. He was a widower. His first wife had died from tuberculosis some years before, but I think they were only married before she passed about 3 or 4 years, and then he married Audrey, his second wife, and they were married for over 50 years. And so that, of course, doesn't carry over into the stories.
Right.
And I had the foresight or the hindsight to ask Sinclair Siegfried why that was. And he said, well, Alf didn't want to complicate the books. And when you're a writer, you have to decide what your purpose is. And he said he also didn't want to upset me. He said, I was not very happy when these books first came out
Yeah,
because they had a lot of personal details about me.
sure.
He said, by the time the second book came out, I had changed that opinion and was very supportive of James. So I asked him what he felt the first time James gave him a manuscript and let him read it, asked him to read it. And he paused for the longest time. And then he said, quite simply, Rick, I was astonished. And that, I think, says it all. These men had such a high degree of mutual respect that Siegfried's eccentricities were true. They were there. He manifested those when I was there. He was a little bit of a harsh teacher, although very compassionate with the animals and their owners. But to me, he expected a lot, and when I couldn't deliver, was not kind in letting me know that perhaps I should have known those answers. But I never doubted his authenticity and his level of empathy and compassion. And that's what I took away from my time there more than anything. There were lots of fun times too. I mean, visiting his pigeon loft. Siegfried, it doesn't come out in the books, but he was a pigeon fanatic. He had pigeons that served in the Second World War, and were lost over the English Channel. He had so many stories to tell about his carrier pigeons, and he was so proud of them. And of course, as a young person crawling around in his pigeon loft, which, as I already mentioned, hasn't been really highlighted in any of the books.
No, there was a story I saw on one of the television shows, but it showed Tristan with the pigeons,
Yeah.
not him. So yeah, that I don't think
But
I ever remember reading about him having pigeons.
but he changed the moment he walked into his pigeon loft. This was his little piece of the earth that was all his, and he knew every pigeon by name. He would say, "Oh, that's Wellington. Wellington just completed 75 miles in 2 days and created a new record." And he knew everything about every pigeon. And I thought that I talk about that in the new book, upcoming book, and certain things like that.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
And I hope people will be interested in an out an outside of veterinarian's point of view of what those two gentlemen and Tristan were able to accomplish, and their compassion. So I think the books, according to Siegfried, are about 50% authentic, but the other 50% is based on things that actually
Based
happened.
on reality.
Yes,
Yeah,
but stories have to have a beginning, a middle, and an end.
sure.
And most stories didn't lend themselves to that within the space of a few pages, unless uh, Herriott took a few shortcuts, I would call
Right.
them, or licensed editions. And so, but that's what I came away with, Julie. Totally authentic in every single way.
I love those stories. If anybody hasn't read those books, I know they're old now, but if you haven't read those books, what I love about it is he truly shows through his character, James Herriott, and through the Siegfried character and the Tristan character, that veterinarians are humans. They make mistakes. They have struggles with those mistakes. There was a lot of examples where crazy things would happen and the clients would be angry. Just all the things that we go through that I think we sometimes forget that that's part of it and part of why it's such an interesting profession. And that's what I like about it. It's like, okay, it's real. Even if the stories are a little bit manipulated, they're basically true to what we all experience. And in a different time, these were older veterinarians and practiced in a time where medicine wasn't as sophisticated as it is now, but the human stories still apply, and
Absolutely.
the mistakes and the humility that they display. And that's why I love it so much, because it really makes you see how cool this profession is.
Yeah, and I wondered before we started to chat where I actually fit into your large number of podcasts that you've hosted over the years, well over 300, as you mentioned. And I know that you would normally be, I made a list of things that I have enjoyed listening to on your podcast series, and leadership, communication, emotional intelligence, entrepreneurship, work culture. I think that's what we just mentioned about Harriet.
Right.
Uh, overcoming burnout, wellness, compassion, fatigue, all of those things that are so important in the veterinary world. I think that Harriet's books are a tonic for any and all of those, because what comes through every page is the power of optimism, the power of positive thinking, if you like,
Right.
and the power of empathy.
Right.
And I think all veterinarians enter the profession with those qualities uppermost in their minds. And through day-to-day pressures of veterinary practice and all of the other things that combine, we can lose sight of that. I think of Harriet often when I'm in a tough spot because those two veterinarians and the farmers they dealt with always felt there was a way forward. And so their optimism, I think, is the one word I would use. Their positive attitudes towards everything, even in times of difficulty. And vets have many times of difficulty, as we
Sure.
both know. I thought it was it's amazing. It's amazing. So I loved my time there. I hope the book will be of interest to people.
Well, I'll be the first one to read it because it's of interest to me. So I'm excited.
Well, I'm going to ask you to read a couple of
I
chapters.
feel like now I'm 1 degree. I felt like I was part of that story when I went there and visited that area. But now that I know that you were there, I feel like I'm like 1 degree away from James Herriott, and that makes me feel very good.
Yeah,
Very blessed.
I was very lucky to fall on my feet with that. Had no idea what
Yeah.
I was going into.
Right, right. Until, until later, right? Then you learned that what kind of an experience you actually had. And yeah,
Absolutely.
that's incredible. I love that. So are there more stories from that time, or should we go on to another?
Um, I guess I tried to make a note here somewhere about I've told you about the pigeon loft and casting the cattle. I think the other stories should come out in the book, but they're all authentic stories based on my experience. I did get to see the very wealthy lady,
This is Pumphrey.
Mrs. Pumphrey, her
Tricky
true
Lou.
self, and her little dog Bambi, which in
Was
the
that the dog's actual name,
that was
Bambi?
the dog's actual name,
I love that.
and she did so much good work through her love of animals. I think that comes through a little bit in the books and the TV shows, but she is truly a remarkable woman, and I mention her in particular. Mrs. Hall, the housekeeper, didn't exist um, when when I was there, and is although she's an endearing and wonderful character and compliments the boys in the book, in the books and the TV shows, she is not based on a real character.
Person.
Mm.
Yeah. And
But
did
I think the feeling of traveling around the Yorkshire Dales in an
it's an
old Land
incredible
Rover.
place.
Oh, I know a story I will share because it's very pertinent to the sort of environment that you and I loved in those books and in the Yorkshire Hills. And every place well, let's start at a different point. Most veterinarians plan their day. They have consultations in the morning, in the afternoon they do surgery, and in the evening they have consultations, for example. And I know there are many variations on that theme, but they plan the day based on logistical considerations. Donald Sinclair or Siegfried planned his day based on food. He knew that Mrs. So and so would be baking scones because it was Thursday. So he would time his visit to that farm just at morning tea time. And he would say, as we drove up to the farm, I hope you're hungry. We're going to get the best scones in the valley. And then he would know that somebody had slaughtered a pig just the right time previously so that he would be able to get a nice serving of bacon.
That's
And by
awesome.
the time he left these farms, it was almost a ritual. The back seat of his Land Rover would be filled with food, fruit, vegetables, bacon, ham, all sorts of things, and particularly baked goods. And I remember his car had his Land Rover had a certain smell to it, which veterinary vehicles tend to get as the medicines spill and as the
Dirty
natural
boots.
Yeah, the natural, I was going to put that more delicately, the natural side effects, if you like, or effects of a day in a farmyard, come home to roost. And so it was always quite smelly, and the smells were great to me, but very veterinary. But on this particular day, he'd been given something food-wise wrapped in a tea towel, and I was wondering what it was and wondering what it was, and it was a freshly baked fruit cake with baked raisins and so on, and fruit cherries in it, and the odor of that fruitcake just filled the car and completely overpowered all the somewhat unpleasant odors that were there. And that was a big memory. His back seat would just fill up with produce and groceries and things that people wanted to share with him. He had the respect of his clients very, very much so. And that comes through in his written word.
And isn't that fascinating? I've always thought that was a fascinating thing about vet med is how many of our clients think enough of us to bring us gifts. And
Yeah,
and I don't
yeah.
think any other profession. Like I've never taken a gift to my doctor or my dentist or but it seems like in vet med, that's kind of what people like to do. They like to, send flowers or bring cookies or yeah, I've always been fascinated by that. And I think that's a unique part of you telling that story is that's how much they honor that veterinarian.
I think you're right. I think all veterinarians are embarrassed at times with the generosity, and it's not monetary generosity. Often that's a different story, but
Sure, right, right. We
it's
don't get as much money, I guess, as other
yeah, it's
professions do, but
little things. When I finally put away all my veterinary things, some of the hardest things to part with, and I haven't parted with a lot of them, were the personal gifts. A poem that an owner had
sure.
written for their dog, who I'd put to sleep a
I
week
know.
before, and yet this poem came through about their dog. Some people are able to recognize that, for example, let's talk about putting a dog to sleep. That is not an easy thing for a veterinarian to do.
It is not.
Of course, it's not easy for the family and those that have known the dog its whole life. But for a veterinarian, I found that every time I put an animal to sleep, I lost a little bit of myself, which I could get back through the power of positive thinking,
Right.
recognizing that it was the best decision for the animal. But it was often those families who would write the most moving letters telling me about their dog or their cat or their horse, but also saying how much they appreciated the fact that it was the animal's time and that we had allowed the animal to leave the world with dignity. And so it's a tough profession, as we've said before, but very, very rewarding. And I think for me, that positivity, which has to be volitional, it's very easy to take yourself to the dark side, as you in your job know, because
Sure.
as a life coach, that's much of what you must deal with. But with a little optimism and a little positive effort, um, I used to get myself through those difficult times, realizing what a service, and that's a horrible word, but what a service we were providing to the animals and their owners. And that we paid a price, yes, but it came back to us many times over. And those little gifts and things were one way that people could acknowledge that you'd
Sure. Yeah.
taken care of their most beloved family member.
Right. Yeah. And it's fascinating to kind of make that relation because, you know, Sinclair was doing it so many years ago and it's still the same today. It's
Absolutely.
packaged differently, but it's very similar. The emotions are all still there. The difficulties are all still there. The struggle with mental health. A lot of what I've read about Alf is that he struggled with depression.
Yes, I can't speak to that because that wasn't part of my experience.
Yeah, you don't see it on the
Yeah, I
outside,
did.
right?
I did spend a couple of days with him, but his son wrote about that, and
Hmm.
Siegfried has commented about that, and yet Alf Alf White Herriott gave 100% to every animal, even in the most
Right.
difficult of circumstances. I only got to spend 2 days of my 2 weeks with him, but it was he had a different approach from Siegfried, much more measured and gentle. Siegfried was blustering and with the greatest respect to him because I loved the man, had a need to say the last word, to have the last word. And I learned that very quickly, and particularly over the incident of the equine,
Sorry.
bless you, over the equine anesthesia issue. But yeah, I was very lucky. That was a great.
Yeah, he wasn't a subtle person, it doesn't seem like.
Well, no, blustery is a word I've used to describe him, and eccentric. There's no question that he was somewhat eccentric, but a heart of gold, and he spoke with such affection about his partner, Alf Wight, James Herriott, such appreciation. As I've already told you, he almost burst into tears when I asked him what he thought about Alf writing the books. And
Yeah,
he said, as I've already said, it bears repeating. He said, they're astonishing.
yeah.
What
Well,
a
and
compliment to an author.
a compliment and to see a partnership like that that lasted so long and they still really admired each other even though they were different is interesting because that doesn't happen every day either.
Yeah, mutualism. Mutualism is common in the animal world, and yet we humans fail to learn that message, although it's around us every day. You only need to look at birds in your garden feeding their fledges to understand the value of mutualism. Everyone wins, and so I think, yeah, you're right. That relationship between Harriet and Siegfried was a great human example of mutualism, where both parties give and both parties benefit more than each party would on their own.
Right.
That came through loud and clear in my own experience with them.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
all
to
right.
me, as the life coach, that sounds like a lesson for people to think about that when they're working with others. That if you have someone that's different than you, rather than comparing yourself to them and trying to be like them, honor the fact that you're this way, they're that way, and together you do the work of more than two because it's like cumulative, right? So that's something to think about when you're in a practice with multiple veterinarians is how do you complement each other, not necessarily how do you compete. Because
Yeah, when
Harriet
when
couldn't
the
have been Siegfried and Siegfried couldn't have been Harriet. They're just so different,
so in veterinary practice, when the team wins, every individual wins.
right?
The team's not there. Some individuals may win, and that's a horrible term to use, win. It's not a competition, but
Right.
may gain benefit, and some won't. But if everybody is looking out for everybody else, which is what a team is, teams are stronger than individuals, and you're right, Julie, it does apply to veterinary practices. Absolutely, it applies
Yeah.
to veterinary
So
practice.
that's another lesson you can get from those books.
Yeah,
As you can see, I'm a big fan. So if you haven't read those books, go read them.
I couldn't emphasize that more. As a matter of fact, on my bookcase over here, I I don't need to reach very far to find all the original versions
Yes,
of
I love that.
of and I have all of them, but these are just the ones
That's
I reread
awesome.
them. Particularly, I've reread them all as I've written this
I bet.
narrative because I didn't want to repeat any stories and have people say, "Oh, you took that from this book." Uh,
Sure.
but there are so many. It's these guys. There are so many stories. Uh, I remember now one story that this will be my last Harriet story.
Okay.
Otherwise, people won't have to read the book.
I
But
know. I listen to them all day though, so I say
but
go.
there was one farm we went to, and it was when I was with Herriott, with James White, with Alfred Wight, and he said as we drove up to this beautiful old Yorkshire farmhouse made out of stone and settled into the Yorkshire Dales, into the hillside, green pastures, stone walls. Everybody has the picture, I think.
Hmm.
And as we went up to the house, he said, I want you to count how many times this farmer says to tell the truth, to tell you the truth, to tell the truth, Mr. Herriott, to tell the truth, Mr. Herriott. And I can't do a Yorkshire accent, but
Right.
so he said, and I want you to tell me how many times he says it when we drive out of here. Well, one, two, three, four, five, six. Every time Harriet asked a question, he would start the answer with to tell the truth.
To tell the truth.
Yeah, to tell the truth. And so Harriet knew this, that he would get that response. So he was counting two. So as we drove away from the farm, he said, don't tell me how many times he said that. He said, I think you probably got to 30. And that was exactly the number I'd got to. And it was years later that I thought, how did he do that? I've made
Sure. How
it
do you have a
sound very,
conversation and keep count?
he had that sort of a brain. He had this humorous side, and years later I worked out that the farmer only said that when Mr. Herriot asked him a direct question. Otherwise, he didn't say it. And
Right.
so Herriot, of course, knowing his clientele as well as he did, knew this, and he got it spot on 30 times. And if he'd asked one more question, it would have been 31.
31. Yeah. That's
So,
crazy.
and that's the art of veterinary practice. That's the heart and soul of veterinary practice is to actually, I think Herriot and Sinclair actually really enjoyed the people, even when they wrote that a farmer was difficult or a farmer wouldn't listen or a farmer had started his own therapy, which had made matters worse. Even in those circumstances, there was this deep respect for the relationship between the farmer and his or her animals. And that's worth being reminded about as veterinarians. Even the most difficult client who's clearly out of order is doing most of what they do. They're showing their true personality in times of stress and in the interests of their animal. I have to believe that. I don't think there are people mean enough to just pick on the vet. And I know people complain about bills and the amount that it costs and everything, but vets who communicate those things in advance, I think, empathize with the fact that this is a big expense for a client. I think they're the ones who face less negatives in their relationships, in their practices.
I think that's absolutely true. And just to realize that that person is in a very stressful time in
Yeah.
their life. And sometimes if you can think of it that way and be like, okay, this isn't their best. I'm getting a lot of their worst because they're stressed out financially, they're losing time at work, their dog just puked all over their house and they're having to clean or whatever. I went through it last week. My one dog came home from the kennel and the next couple days he was sick and he was vomiting for like, I don't know,
Oh, I'm
probably
sorry.
probably only like 6 hours, but it seemed like days to me because every time I turned around there was vomit on my floor. And I found myself going, oh gosh, I have to take this dog to the vet. And then I was like, wait a minute, I am the vet. What would I do if this dog was a client's dog? And so then I was like, okay, I got this. And luckily I had some Serenia and I took him off his food and he ended up being fine. But just that like stress that I was feeling over
Yes.
that one, few hours of dog vomit, and now I would have had to go to the vet and I wouldn't have known what was going on and I would have had to spend a lot of money. And, if you put yourself in their shoes, it's so much easier to understand their bad behavior.
So that's such an interesting point, and I love that story. But vets animals shouldn't get sick. That's
That's what I
no,
thought.
no,
I'm like, why is he sick? He never
yeah.
gets sick.
We spend all our time caring for other people's animals, and it's so hard on us. And on that note, looping back to something we discussed a little earlier, when a veterinarian loses an animal, has to put an animal to sleep, or an animal dies, uh, it has unquestionably greater significance, even for those people who love their animals beyond themselves. There's something about caring for animals day and night and weekends, and then losing your own animal that is awfully difficult to deal with. So I, and where does the empathy and compassion come from outside your family if you have that circumstance? And so another aspect of why being a veterinarian is the most rewarding thing anybody could possibly want to do when they love animals, but it's also you have to handle a lot of situations. You don't have to. It's advised that you handle a lot of situations. So I would say to myself in those circumstances exactly what I said to my clients, which is really telling, and I'm sure you did the same thing. Um, what would I say to a client in this circumstance? You said that about the problem with your dog.
Right.
What would the vet do?
Yeah. How would the vet treat this?
And
Oh, you are the vet.
the vet would remind me of what a wonderful life the animal had had, what a wonderful owner I'd been, and those sorts of positives. And the balance can be tipped rapidly if we take our own advice.
Sure. Yeah, but we forget that. We forget that we have those skills and that we're very good at it. It's a profession that because of the emotions and we not only have the human part of it, we have the animal part of it. So it's kind of double emotions. And I think it's just that much more important that we think about it and take care of what we need to take care of because that's the only way you can make it through it and still love it. And that's what I'm trying to, with people like you that still love what you do and always have loved it and these stories, it's like, okay, it's a unique situation that we're in. And can we think of it as being a privilege and an honor to do it rather than a chore?
That's my words exactly. Had I spoken about that, those would have been the words I would have chosen. No,
We're
no,
on the same wavelength.
not surprisingly. Yeah, you're right, but it's true. And so I just urge those people who maybe have lost sight of some of those things to talk to somebody. I think I said this last time we had a podcast. I mean, talk to somebody, talk to Julie. And it's amazing how much you'll find you're actually doing right. And
Mostly.
the recognition of what you're doing is often the cure, if you like, often the way forward.
Yeah, it's
So
self-reflection, right?
yes, and to people out there who are struggling with some of these things, give yourself a pat on the back for the things you are doing well. And they'll often be things that you just think are part of your everyday job. Oh, that's nothing to be proud of, or that's nothing to. Those things are the things you need to take note of, and those are the
Right.
things that will strengthen your resolve. And so, yeah, I think what you do is so important, Julie, and our profession needs people who understand these things more than ever right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I love doing it. It's been really rewarding for me and I'm going to do it as long as I can. So hopefully I'll be here another 10 years doing this.
Yeah.
I hope so. So if we leave the whole James Herriott thing, and again, everybody read the books. Um, tell me, do you have a story where you felt really discouraged and you were really stressed out or had a big failure or something of that nature? that you were able to feel the negative emotion and then process it? I
Yeah,
hate
no,
to put
that's
you on the spot, but that's kind of
well,
what
that
we're talking
I
about.
had a list of stories that were not like that. So you're very, you're
We
actually
can go to those next if
it's
you have a story that fits that
very
question.
insightful to take me to the other end of the spectrum. Of course, I have stories about those situations, and I think perhaps the one that I've got to dig deep because I, like most of us, try to put those stories, but aside. But as a veterinary neurologist, I was presented with a German Shepherd by a disabled man who drove his wheelchair, was totally independent, drove his wheelchair uh, using his lips to manipulate a little lever. And he came in and he had a little cart behind his wheelchair on which this German Shepherd had spent most of its life. This man was active in improving the life for disabled people. As a matter of fact, at a national level, he actually was lobbying in Washington, D.C. before he got his dog, his German Shepherd, and he was in the lobby of the Capitol. And remember, he couldn't move arms or legs or neck. And someone came up, reached inside his pocket, and stole his wallet.
Oh, how could they?
That's the day. And he was powerless.
Ah,
They looked him in the eye.
that's disgusting.
That was the day he got or started the process to get tremor. No one ever stole from him in that situation again. And this dog
Right.
rode with him everywhere he went. So he bought in Tremor was having difficulty and brought Tremor to me in at the University of California in Davis, California. And doing a good physical exam, I noticed that I could not hear his heartbeat. It was very muffled, or muffled is the word. And so, long story short, um, it turned out that Tremor, the dog, had a heart-based tumor that was bleeding into the sac around the heart, the
Cardium, yeah.
pericardium. So he had a pericardial effusion, a classical electrocardiogram of electrical alternans, which is how we diagnosed those things in those days
Right. Before
before
all the echoes and ultrasounds, right?
before the echoes and the ultrasounds, and so we attempted to remove the heart-based tumor, and Tremor passed away during the surgery. So to go and tell this man that his companion of 12 years, who had been by his side through everything, that his dog had died during the surgery, I thought was going to be the most difficult job I had ever done.
Yeah, that's got to be hard.
However, the owner of this dog asked me one question. I'm having to remember this as we go. And he said, "Can you tell me that you did everything possible to save my dog?" And I said, "Without a doubt." I said, "Absolutely. You
100%. Yeah.
had our best cardiothoracic surgeon in the business, actually, at that time, world renowned. Doing the surgery, it was just impossible."
Right.
And in that moment, he thanked me and apologized to me for having lost his dog. He said, "I know this must affect you dramatically, but it wasn't about him." In that final moment of reckoning, it wasn't about him. He loved that dog, and then he was worried about the people who'd cared for the dog. That story has come to the surface now because of the conversation we're having, but it would surface when people weren't as understanding.
Sure.
And as I said, we look to our own experience and our team to for strength sometimes. That story got me through many a tough time. So I hope that was the type of story you were
Yeah, I think that's
wanting.
great because we have a tendency to forget that, right? Like we would remember the people that were screaming at us in grief. That would be very painful. But for him to turn it around and be like, I thank you
Yeah.
for putting all that effort in, even though it didn't work out. I mean, that's really why this is so rewarding.
And then to his gift to me was about 7 months later when he sent me a photo of his new puppy, you know.
That's the best, isn't it? I used to love that when people would get new dogs and bring them in or at
And what
least
a
let
li
me know that it just shows how powerful people um regard that relationship.
what a
That
life that
even
new
the
puppy is going to
heartbreak. Oh yeah. Yeah,
what
if
a
you
life that new puppy was going to have. Yeah, I'm have tears in my eyes. It was
yeah, that's a
that's
great
how
story. Well,
that's
see, it's a
how
good thing I brought that one up. That's a good
that's how
story that you
much we
wouldn't have
care,
told.
isn't it? That's how much we care. You can't be a veterinarian and not care. I've had young veterinarians say to me, I get so involved with my patients. I know it's bad for me. And I say, wait, you're missing the point here. It's not bad for you. It's good for you if you can handle it. And
Right,
if you look at the bigger picture, it's not about you. It's
right,
about you, the owner, the animal, the family, and the community. It's
right,
and if we can look outward, I I've been able, I think, not the way you do, but I think in my own way, to help many young veterinarians through difficult times by assuring them that they did everything they possibly could, given the financial constraints and the circumstances and the disease that the animal had, etc.
right,
And that they have to, at some stage, recognize doing your very best is enough.
right.
I,
Yeah,
it's I've written a blog about when is enough, what is enough, and it alludes to many of those things.
I know. That's great. Well, do you have another story at hand? Should we keep going?
Sure, I need to stop on a story that highlights the absolute high spots of veterinary medicine and the relationship between a veterinarian and the owners of the dog and the animal, not necessarily a dog and the animal itself. And by the way, I'm just going to interject here. I have a personal aversion to the term pet parent. I don't know how you feel about it. We all do.
It wasn't popular when we were younger. It was the
No,
patient or the pet and the owner.
yeah. Am I
Pet
just not
parent's
moving
something
with
that's happened in the last, what, 10 or 15 years,
Am
maybe?
I
Maybe
not
longer.
moving with the times? I don't know. I think perhaps I am because I wrote a very thoughtful blog the other day about people who wheel their dogs around in prams. And I've always, up until researching it, which is what we said a blog can do,
Right,
researching a blog, I had very fixed opinions, let's just say. And after researching the blog and finding out the importance to some people of, I mean, not just with a disabled dog or an older dog, I can see the logic there, but with healthy
sure.
dogs, what it really signifies. And I'm, it's an example, if you like, of having a fixed idea, researching it with trusted sources, and then being able to say, I was wrong.
Change your view. Yeah.
That was supposed to
It's
be
hard to
fun.
say wrong, right?
It is hard to say, right? So anyway, let me tell you an upbeat story to finish on.
Okay.
The king of Thailand back in the 70s was His Majesty King Bhumipol, very popular with the Thai people, literally worshipped by the Thai people. He was a very kind ruler. He there had been a military coup, but they kept him on because he was such a symbol of hope and leadership to the people. And so his passion was stray dogs. He would stop his white Rolls Royce in the middle of Bangkok or the countryside if there was a dog that was a stray dog, and he would take it and find a home. He's credited with starting the equivalent of the SPCA in Thailand. And of course, with their religious beliefs there in that part of the world, this was very true to the religious beliefs of the people.
Sure.
He found a dog one day who had a very special place in his heart. The dog's name was Tong Dang. And Tong Dang, that's a royal name. He gave this particular dog a royal name and he kept this dog. This dog had the run of his palace, traveled from palace to palace. I think he had more than 10 palaces throughout Thailand with him. And this dog had a seizure. So I traveled from the US to his southern palace in Thailand
What?
on the
You
Bay of
you really did? Like he flew you there to take
on
care
the
of the
Bay of
season?
Thailand
That's so
to
cool.
examine his dog. Now, his southern palace, as it was called, is on the waterfront. Two Thai warships are anchored just offshore. Over 10,000 troops are stationed at this palace. You literally have to allow them to know every minute of your history, your father and mother's history, and beyond to be cleared to get in there. And I went into the middle of this palace, which was, let's just say, gold was popular. And in his living room, waited for him to descend the stairs, which were red carpeted stairs. And he descended the stairs after his dog. The dog went first, which is not usual. The dog promptly looked at me and went and peed on the gold couch. And one of his, and they were servants, one of his house uh, helpers came in on her hands and knees, cleaned it up, and went out backwards. That's literally, you remember the King and I, the
Yes.
King of Siam? Well,
Hmm.
this was
Very similar.
elements of this in there. I expected Julie Andrews to break into song at any moment. And so he came down the stairs just wearing regular clothes, but behind him there were three nurses and two young soldiers who had no necks. Their shoulders started at their ears, you know, that conformation. And they had
Yeah,
little,
big muscles.
I learned in that moment that the smaller your automatic weapon is, the more damage it can do because, not that they fired it, but because
Right.
they held these little guns on their chests. I was intimidated to say the least.
Sure.
I
Yeah.
had
Don't
been,
mess up that dog or you're in
yeah,
trouble.
I'd been briefed by his chargé d'affaires, um, a gentleman in a big white navy uniform with lots of medals and a white peaked cap, how to react when the king came to talk to me. All I remembered was under no circumstances reach for the king.
Like,
Don't,
don't shake his hand.
no, no. So the king comes up to me and he's got these two guards behind him and this entourage, and we're going to talk about his dog. Tong Dang, meanwhile, is looking, eyeing me suspiciously, now sitting on this beautiful couch. This was a stray dog of no particular breed.
He won the lottery,
Oh my goodness.
the Thailand
By the
lottery.
way, there's a book written about him,
Really?
and so the king came over, and all I could think was, "Don't reach for the king! Don't reach for the king! Don't reach for the king!" And the king put his hand out, and as he put his hand out, I swayed backwards, not, not raising my arms. He took his hand back, and I swayed forward. This happened three times.
Oh, that's funny.
The king grabbed my hand and shook it, and he turned to the chargé d'affaires, his his assistant beside him, and said, "I see you've introduced Dr. LeCouteur to our customs." So anyway, I was terrified. Examined the dog. The dog turned out to have epilepsy, and we were able to. It was the first dog ever to receive an MRI in Thailand. On the king's orders, it went into the best hospital,
Into the
and
human hospital.
human hospital. Nothing was found. We treated the dog with anti-epileptic drugs, anticonvulsants, very successfully. I remained in contact for years about that, and so it was a really wonderful experience. I was supposed to have dinner with the king, but he wasn't feeling well, which may have been a way for him to get out of having dinner with me. But his private chef cooked me a 7 or 8 course meal. I
Wow.
sat in the king's dining room at this huge table. I couldn't see either end, it was so long. Just me and about 8 people bringing courses of most beautiful food that you'd ever want to eat to me, one after the other after the other. And the king kept in touch with me, as I've said, for many years. Every time I would visit Thailand, which was frequently during those years because we were starting veterinary conferences in Thailand, every time I visited, the king's attaché would arrive wherever I was speaking. And speaking of gifts, he would give me a gift,
Wow.
and usually a very nice gift. And the king expressed his gratitude as a king does. And the last bit to that story is I traveled to the north of Thailand on one trip and to a place called Chiang Mai, which you may know of. And it's the gateway across the border to the temples, the wonderful like Angkor Wat and so on. And so staying in Chiang Mai, I got a guide, and her name was Moo. And Moo was very surly, very unpleasant, going through the rituals of being a guide, but not really getting into it.
She didn't
And
want to be a guide to
I,
the veterinarian of the king's dog.
she didn't know that at that stage. My wife whispered to me, "Tell her you know the king."
Right.
So I waited till there was an opportune moment, and I said, "Oh yeah, Tong Dang, I'm his veterinarian." The mood changed instantly.
Really?
Not only did Moo hang on to my arm for the rest of the tour, but she would speak in Thai to anybody we met, and they would come and just touch me.
Wow.
I was treated like royalty
You
because
were then the king.
I was the veterinarian to the king's dog. So that's my upbeat
I
story
love that.
to
That's we
finish
should put that in your bio. Veterinarian to the king of
to the king of
Thailand.
Thailand.
That should be in your bio.
I, I, this is my everyday bookshelf, but I have the king's book there. That's the king.
Is that the dog?
That's the dog, yeah. And
That's awesome.
that's the couch that the dog peed on.
Oh, that's hilarious. I love that. Well,
Unfortunately,
that's a perfect story to end on because what an interesting story and what a privilege to be
yeah,
the
yeah.
veterinarian to the king.
I've been so blessed with
Yeah,
opportunity.
you've had some great ones. I'm
I
going to have you back again because I'm sure there's many more stories.
well, as long as you can stomach them, I'm willing to
Well, the
participate.
last time we were on the podcast, you said your wife's sick of listening to them, and I said, "Well, I'll listen to them."
That's right. I remember that. Well, yeah. She actually
So
chose to go out during this podcast so that she didn't have to hear them through the wall.
she didn't want to hear them all again. She's
No,
heard them many times. I know that's how our stories get, right? They're like folklore.
yeah, the
So
older we get.
yeah, so tell everyone where they can find your blog and your books and all of that. And then I promise it's been about 6 months, I think we decided since we've been together. So maybe like every 6 months we'll do this.
I'd love to. Don't leave it too long.
I love it. No, 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 I
Yeah.
won't. I'll keep you
Um,
on my list of people to invite back.
so I have a website which is simply ricklecouteur.com, and anyone can find anything they want on that. But should I spell my name so that
Sure. Yeah, spell it. I'll put it in the notes, but go ahead and spell it for people that are just listening.
because it's a French name and people forget the last.
It looks like you should say it in a French accent.
I can do that. Oui, je peux faire ça. So it's RickLeCouteur
Lots of vowels.
.com. And so all one word, all lowercase.
I love it. And your books are on Amazon, right?
Our books are in Barnes and Noble, Amazon, a few of those outlets.
And I want to be the first one to read your James Herriott book, so
Well, I'm going to let you
you better remember me
I will indeed.
when you're rich and famous.
I want you to critique it.
Oh, I'd love to. I don't know how much of a critic I'll be. I'll probably love it, but well, it's been super fun. I love these kind of podcasts where I get to hear everyone's stories, and you have some great ones. You've had a
Yeah, I don't.
varied career. I'm sure there's many, many more.
I'm not sure we've helped anybody, but I hope we've entertained people.
Well, entertainment is a form of help, but I really think a lot of your stories have great lessons. And I think anytime veterinarians get together and talk, it's therapeutic.
Well, thank you. I know you have your own stories too, which
Oh yeah, I have a few. Not I was never the veterinarian to a king, so I don't have any of those, but I have a lot of stories too. So we'll get together and do this again for sure.
thank you. And
All
thank you to
right.
everybody who's made it this far through the podcast. I really
Yeah, thank you all for listening. It's been super fun. And if you like this kind of podcast, definitely let me know so I can keep having Rick back because I enjoy talking to you. So for me, it's just fun.
mutual feeling. Thank you.
All right. Have a beautiful week, everyone. Bye.
Bye,
Bye.
everyone.